Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Development Standards Committee. This meeting is being recorded. It's also being broadcast live on the Angus Council YouTube channel. So can I remind all those joining us remotely to turn on their microphones to mute unless they wish to speak, and indicate they wish to do so by raising their hands remotely. Can I also remind members that under Standing Order 19.4, remote members attending hybrid meetings where quasi-judicial and regulatory matters are being considered will not be permitted to participate by audio only and must have their video and camera functions switched on. I'd also like to remind members that it's currently the pre-election period in light of the forthcoming Scottish parliamentary elections on the 7th of May. All members have received an email in relation to the Council's pre-election guidance, and I'd ask members to be mindful of the legal requirements in the discussion and debate during this meeting this morning. Before we commence formal proceedings, I'd like to welcome members of the public either here in the Chamber or online to today's meeting. Other than those speakers who have formally applied to speak today on any specific planning application, members of the public again, either here in the Chamber or online, can only observe proceedings and cannot ask questions or make comment. Right, apologies for absence. Fiona.
Yes, Convener, we've got apologies for absence from Councillor Cruikshank, Councillor Fotheringham and Councillor Melville. Today we've got Councillor Braze and Councillor Stewart online, and the rest of the members are in the Chamber.
Thank you very much. Members' declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? Councillor Clark.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, as a local member, I have to say that I have been approached by many constituents, a lot of whom I know. I don't see that as material, and I will certainly go through the proceedings. I would also like to say that the Speaker, Mr Gardner, today, I was Community Council Chair when Mr Gardner came to be a member, so I thought it was important that I say, but that's it, Convener. I think that's just transparency and nothing else.
That's Councillor Clark. Can just maybe turn your mic, Councillor Clark, towards a bit more, that'd be fine, thanks. Councillor McLaren.
Yes, thank you, Convener. A statement of transparency. Regarding item 6, report 1226, as a local councillor, I'm familiar with a number of the objectors, but have not discussed or expressed any views. Thank you.
Councillor Bacon.
Mine's just a statement for information, if that's okay. In one of the papers today is the rope works at Montrose. I was unable to take part in a visit, so therefore will have to leave when that item comes up.
Thanks, Councillor Bacon. Councillor Nicholl, I guess you're saying the same thing, are you?
Exactly the same thing.
Okay, and I'll say Councillor Duff will be declaring on the same basis.
Not quite. I missed the first meeting at which it was agreed to have the site visit, so I have not had any role in it, so I will have to leave as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. I think that's all noted for all of those who...
Councillor Stewart.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Stewart. Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, it's a declaration. Item 7, report 12326. I previously left the chamber when this was considered before, so I'll just do likewise again.
Okay, we'll make sure we call you all back in time for the following papers. Right, thank you, all members. Agenda item 3 regards our building warrants. The committee is asked to note during the period the 26th of January 2026 to the 10th of April, a total of 115 building warrants, 2 demolition warrants and 47 amendment to warrants have been approved with an estimated cost of £430,479. Is that noted? Thank you.
Noted.
Agenda item 4, again, this committee is asked to note that during the same period, the 26th of January 2026 to the 10th of April 2026, a total of 93 applications have been approved under delegated decisions and 5 refused under the Planning Act through the scheme of delegation to officers. A copy of the list of delegated applications has been sent to every member. Again, is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. The minute of the previous meeting is agenda item 5, and we submit for approval as a correct record the minute of our meeting of this committee held on the 3rd of February of this year. Are there any comments or adjustments considered necessary to the minutes? If not, are the minutes approved?
Approved.
Thank you. We have a bit of business today with 2 or 3 applications. Agenda item 6 relates to report 122/26. This report deals with planning application number 25/00554/Fool, submitted on behalf of the Verton Group Limited for the change of use from a care home to a 38-bedroom house of multiple occupancy at Lochbank, 75A Graham Crescent, Forfar. Before I hand over to Ms Ramsey, I recognise there's considerable interest in this planning application. The role of this committee is to determine the application on the basis of the building's potential use, not the potential users. The difference is fundamentally important. In addition, I should advise that if the planning application is approved, it would still require to be considered by this Council's Civic Licensing Committee in order to achieve an HMO licence to operate. The suitability of the premises, the intended occupants and other matters would require to be considered at that committee. I should advise that all those who submitted a written comment or response to this planning application were notified last week of the opportunity to speak at today's meeting and had until 9 AM yesterday to lodge a request to speak. Only one respondent did, and out with committee members, council officers, the applicant or the applicant's agent, that respondent is the only member of the public who can address committee today when invited to do so. The speaker in question may also be asked questions by members and is subsequently, however, not permitted to ask questions or pass comment in this chamber on any matters they hear discussed after they have addressed committee or been asked questions. So on that basis, Ms Ramsey, could you start to proceed with the slides, please?
Thank you. Okay, so as already outlined, the applicant seeks to change the use of a care home which has been vacant for over 18 months to a house in multiple occupancy. The site lies within the development boundary and has no specific land use allocation. The site is bound to the north by Forfar Loch, to the west by the cricket ground, to the east by lock-up garages and residential properties, and to the south by an area of open space. The proposals seek to increase the existing 37 ensuite bedroom care home by an additional 1 ensuite bedroom. I would like to note an error in paragraph 3.3 of the report which outlines there'd be an increase in 3. It should be 1. The proposals do not seek any external changes with only minor internal works. 14 parking spaces would be provided as well as bicycle parking, which you can see on the site plan here. So it's currently a Class 8 use, so without permission it could change to another type of use which would fall under Class 8, which could be a hospital, a college, a training centre, boarding schools, a residential school, etc. There have been 484 letters of representation received, with the breakdown noted in section 7 of the report. The majority of these have been in objection with the issues listed. As already noted, the planning application relates to the use of the land only and not the end user or the potential behaviour of the tenants. So the key planning considerations is the principle of development and the impact the proposal would have on residential amenity of the surrounding area. Whilst there is potential for an increase in noise and activity with the proposed use, both Environmental Health and the Planning Service are content that the established use is residential and the number of residents would be similar. Therefore, any impacts are unlikely to be significant. As there are no external changes, there would be no increased impacts on overlooking or overshadowing to the neighbouring properties. The existing site contains external amenity space and car and bicycle parking will also be available on site. The site is well located in terms of access to open space, public transport, and it's easily accessible to the town centre and to local services by walking or by cycling. There will also be a dedicated area for refuse collection, storage and recycling on site. So this is the existing proposed basement plan. Very little changes here. So 2 cloakrooms would be changed to laundry rooms. This is the existing ground floor plan. We've numbered the bedrooms, hopefully you can see that there. So there are 15 currently on the ground floor. And the proposed ground floor plan, there would be 16 bedrooms. So I've highlighted here where the additional bedroom would be. It was a day room previously. And on the first floor, there again, the rest of the bedrooms. And virtually the same. So these are a couple of extracts on the transportation statement showing within a 20-minute walk and travel distance on the left-hand side how far over through Forfar you could get. And on the right-hand side is the 20-minute cycling travel distance. So this plan shows the town centre here, which you all know, and then the black dot is the application site. So the red dots are bus stops, the core paths are the dark red lines, and then there's also the cycle tracks, which are the slightly lighter red. Sorry, they're not different colours when they come up on our XMAP system. But as you can see, the site is in close proximity to a number of local services. The reuse of a vacant building within the settlement boundary to provide an alternative type of housing accommodation is supported by development plan policy. There are no material considerations that would justify a refusal of this planning application. Therefore, the Planning Service recommends permission be granted subject to the conditions listed in section 10 of the report. I do have some photographs. So these are taken from the applicant's submission. They were on the Selling prospectus. And then this is a video of I took yesterday. If I can get it to play. Oh, it's not going to play. That's a shame. Maybe that's not playing. Apologies. Okay, so this is from external flight. This is from the south, past the open space. On the right-hand side, this is taken from the north at Forfar Loch, looking back towards the building. And then the bottom picture here is taken from the cricket ground. As you can see, it's changed a little bit from the previous photographs. The building has now been boarded up, and I think there's been a few break-ins in the last month or so. If any questions, I'll happily answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. I've got a couple of questions for Ms Ramsey, but I've also got maybe a question for Rose and maybe a question for Mr Petrie as well. So the HMOs, the plan and circular 2/2012 states that there shouldn't be a high concentration of HMOs, and it's defined through the Housing Scotland Act as 3 or more individuals in a property, and the rest of the details in the circular. How do we decide, or how is it decided, whether a 38 resident HMO is better or worse than, say, 9 4 HMOs, 4 occupant HMOs in the same area? Because, I mean, the number of individuals will be the same, and it should have the same effect.
Thank you for that. It's a good question. We can only assess the current application in front of us, which is an existing bedroom, an existing care home, an existing building with 37 bedrooms. So we have assessed the impacts that one unit will have on the surrounding area, rather than, as you say, a number of different units. Yeah. However, I have checked the number of HMOs that are in Forfar, and there's currently one with a licence on 88 East High Street, and then there's a second one, 49 North Street, which is noted as, I'm assuming, to be assessed, because it was only lodged in February 26. So there's only one other licensed HMO in Forfar at the moment that I could find online.
Okay, just come back to the second question. The internal layout of the building, do we consider that there is enough communal space for all the individuals? Because that's going to get pretty small pretty quick, I would imagine.
So really the planning service is only considering the use, not the space that's available for the future residents that would be dealt with by the HMO licence.
Doesn't the design element come into this as well?
So in terms of the design, it's a kind of a direct swap between 37 units to 38 units. So there isn't really a change to the design of the property. And in terms of the amenities for the residents, that would be dealt with by the HMO licence.
Do you want to carry on, Chris, with your questions?
Just for the other officers, yeah. Mr. Barnes, if I can ask you a question. There's 14 parking spaces for there, and that seems reasonable, but there's potentially 38 occupants, each having a car. Does that have an effect on the residential amenity of the area?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Beattie. So the council's parking standards doesn't actually have a standard for HMOs. I think the nearest comparison we have is for students, and the parking standard for students is 1 space per 7 students. So that would result in a requirement for approximately 6 parking spaces plus 1 space per full-time staff equivalent. So in terms of parking, we're quite comfortable that there is adequate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maybe one for Mr. Petrie. In paragraph 8.12, actually this might not be for Mr. Petrie, this might actually end up being for the licensing committee, but I'll ask it anyway, given it was mentioned in that paragraph by Environment Health, that additional controls and through a management plan. Do we have any example of a management plan that can be sort of described to the committee so that we kind of get a feel for what's going on?
I doubt we have that at the moment, because I think that would come to the licensing committee as far as I understand it. But I could be, unless I'm told otherwise. We have the applicant online. Maybe we can address that with them. I
only ask because the circular says that planning and licensing should work together. So I just wondered if maybe we had something that we could mull over.
I've got something here that may potentially help. So there are a few local authorities that I've looked at that outline what a typical an HMO management plan would look like. So it would have details that include maintenance and repairs, communal area cleaning, waste management, antisocial behaviour, emergency contingency, and the safety record keeping for like gas safety certificates and things like that. So they would all be included in a typical management plan.
And that would be scrutinised greater at the licensing side of things. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you very much, Convener. It's a question of kind of for clarity. 38 bedrooms. Could any of these bedrooms be used by a couple or dare I say, a young lady and a child? If that was the case, is it going to increase the occupancy from 38 to whatever?
As far as we're aware, it's the single person occupancy, but that may be a question that the applicant could answer.
You have that opportunity, Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. So what we've got here is a building that was designed as a care home, and now the planning application is to turn it into an HMO, what I might call a bedsit, effectively. That would be my old school language. Now, there's a fundamental difference between a care home and an HMO. In a care home, you'll have a centralised kitchen with a cook, perhaps 2 cooks for that number of residents, cooking their meals. The residents don't cook their own meals. That's part of what they pay for when they go into a care home, what's expected. I would have thought, and I think this is a planning matter, that 2 kitchens for 38 apartments, and I take Councillor Nicholl's point,
seems like a gross inadequacy of kitchens, because we're saying 19 people are going to have to share a kitchen. That doesn't seem in any way sensible. I mean, any university...
Councillor Duff, I get your thing, but can you ask the question of the officer? You're making a comment, really.
Okay, I'm just saying that's the question I'm asking. Is the comparison between how it operated as a care home and an HMO, is that really a fair comparison? Because two kitchens is fine for a care home where you've got staff cooking for the residents, but that's not what's proposed here. So if there are no staff in it, then presumably people are going to be cooking their own meals, and 2 kitchens for 38 people seems like massively too little cooking facilities. I mean, how is it going to work in practice? I think that would be my worry.
Ms. Ramsey, do you want to address that?
So in terms of the kitchen facilities, there is one on the first floor and there are 2 kitchens on the ground floor. There is similarities. I would agree with Andy that like a student accommodation, there wouldn't be a kitchen for every bedroom. There would be multiple bedrooms to 1 kitchen. So again, as I've said earlier, this would really be dealt with through the HMO licence to make sure that amenities are sufficient for the residents. But in planning terms, there are 3 kitchens for the bedrooms, and it's not really something that we've made an assessment of, because it's not something that planning would look at. In terms of amenities, what we are considering is the outdoor amenity space rather than internally.
Okay, Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you. So this is very similar and adjacent to what Councillor Duff and Councillor Beattie were concerned about. I guess it sounds like there's concerns about the well-being of the people who are potential, and the kind of amenities available to the people who are potentially going to be in this HMO. So just for clarity, because I think the public would like a clear answer as possible, are you saying that the suitability and the well-being of this building is and the people who come into it is for the licensing to determine? Because, for example, I'm concerned about, there was a mention of people potentially who are having experienced domestic violence. I'm not sure those people want to be necessarily using a kitchen with 19 other people. They might want quite a lot of privacy, as an example. So I think that's kind of where we're all going with this. So am I right in thinking that is not a planning matter and it is just for licensing committee? Thank you.
Yes, as I said, it's the land use that we're considering, not the end user.
Thanks, Councillor Cowdery. Councillor Clark.
I don't know if anybody, convener, if everybody has asked their questions, convener, and I may be out of line with what I'm about to say. Mine is more of a comment, but it's quite fundamental to the case.
If you do, I'll let you know.
Brilliant. I feel very strongly as a local member that I know this area well, others may do, but my colleagues on this committee come from other areas, all over Angus, the same as I would if I was sitting in a Montrose situation or whatever. And to that end, I really do feel quite strongly that a site visit is very necessary for us, so that we all see and can perhaps ask questions of a roads person, an officer or a planning officer, whoever else is with us. I think it's very important, convener, and I would beg to have that happen.
Okay, Councillor Clark, I think we are at questions, and you're asking a question whether the site visit might be appropriate. I'm going to lead to pass on that a moment until we get round through the whole debate.
Perfectly happy with that, convener.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, are there any other questions from members for the officer? No? Okay. Understanding Order 12 of Angus Council, applicants, supporters and objectors are given the opportunity to address any points which they wish the committee to take into account in coming to its decision. Speakers will be given 5 minutes only, and I'd remind speakers that members of this committee have already been provided with the opportunity to read all considerable volume of submissions by respondents, and thus will be already familiar with many of the points that may be raised. We have one speaker today, Mr. David Gardner. Mr. Gardner, please take your seat here. Problem?
Stop sharing slides, but it's stuck on the...
Okay. But, okay, just bear with me a second, Mr. Gardner. We've got a problem with the IT at the moment, but I think we can continue with the meeting regardless until we need slides for the next presentation.
Yeah, stop sharing. So.
Okay.
Could you just... Sorry, Sarah or Claire, can you check as the camera's moving, because we seem to be stuck on the slides.
Okay, it's important that we have the cameras are working, and the cameras, if you pick you up, but the actual screen's stuck. So I'm going to call it a adjournment for until we can resolve this matter, and we'll come back to you. Okay, thanks very much.
Could you just pause the live stream just now, Sarah?
Right, apologies everyone for that delay. Sorry, Mr. Gardner, you've been patiently waiting. So you've got 5 minutes if you switch your microphone on. And after 4 minutes, I'll give you a minute's warning to wind up as best you can. And if you could remain in your seat, because there may be questions from members for you.
Sure,
okay, just go ahead.
Right, thank you, convener. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for letting me speak today. This is obviously a completely new experience for me, so please bear with. As has been said, the proposal doesn't deal with the intended occupants of the HMO. However, we are left with a massive question mark hanging over this entire proposal, starting at this one. Planning, from what I do know about it, requires a lot of detail. Detail specifically because, amongst other things, you need to know how specific things going through are going to affect other people. If I'm to apply for plan permission for an extension on my house, I don't just get the green light and then I can put up an 8-storey castle in my back garden. It's very specific. There are restrictions, there's architect's reports, there's drawings, there's all that kind of stuff, because the detail is very, very important. Because as I said, we don't know how that's going to affect anybody else. Currently, we're sitting with this proposal with a humongous question mark hanging over it, which leads to no answer for how this is going to affect people. If potentially, you know, a bad scenario happens, this could affect the value on people's houses. People could be led to be trapped on a property they can't sell to get away from something, which is going to impact their mental health. There could be risks on people's safety, children, things like that. We don't know. We don't know, councillors, ladies and gents. We have no idea. The company that's pushing this does not know. There is a huge risk there. So we're sitting here today, and you good folks are the elected representatives of the public. You're the voice of the people within the council. And the people have spoken to the tune of 650 objections, which we garnered from less than 2 weeks of outreach in our community. If we'd have had a longer time period, we would have probably hit 4 figures. It's fairly obvious what people are saying, regardless of how they word it. They might not be able to speak in NFP4 planning language. However, their objections are in. These people are still objecting. It's not misinformation. It's not fear-mongering. It's an informed population making a statement. The people don't want this. Please, respect democracy, respect the wishes of the people, represent us, and reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Gardner. Just if you hold fire just for a second, just in case, do any members present or online wish to ask Mr. Gardner any questions? No, you got off lightly, Mr. Gardner. Thanks very much for your time. Just take your seat.
Let me speak today.
Thank you. Right, we also have the agent on behalf of the applicants here, Mr. Paul Fretwell. Mr. Fretwell's online. And is, I believe, Mr. Fretwell, you're just willing to take questions. You're not making any statements.
Yes, if there's any questions, I think we've submitted. It explains everything in terms of planning purpose. So. Okay,
thank you. But there have been a couple of matters raised already this morning by members when asking questions of the council officer. So perhaps, Councillor Nicholl, will start with you. You had a question and to refer to the applicant.
Right, thank you, convener. Again, it's a question for really clarity. You've got 38 bedrooms. Could any of these bedrooms be used with a couple?
The level of occupancy and hence the changes to the building is very much dictated by the HMO licensing requirements. And the HMO licensing requirements set sizes of rooms for individuals and occupancy. Off the top of my head, those are only single-sized rooms.
And one other point is, how would you police it?
There'll be, in terms of the management plan side, excuse me.
Yeah, for, you know, for folks sneaking in and sharing the accommodation.
Could I just clarify that's not, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Fretwell, that's not a planning question, no, so that shouldn't be directed to the agent, thank you.
Don't worry, I can understand. There's a thin line here, but just remember it's use rather than users in here.
The policy circular draws a very distinction between what is covered by HMO licensing and what should be planning relevant in terms of the application.
Okay, Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you. Mr. Fretwell, it's just following the question I had for the planning team. I guess one of my concerns would be that people might want to prepare food in their own rooms as opposed to using communal kitchens. Yeah. So with regard to any kind of cooking equipment that might produce fire hazards, anything like that, if you could just provide clarity that would that or wouldn't that be allowed and how would that be enforced? Thank you.
We're obviously not at that stage, but in my opinion, it wouldn't be allowed because of the fire risk assessment, because of the management side. You wouldn't be allowed to cook anywhere other than within the kitchens.
Thank you.
Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Mr. Fretwell, I don't know whether I presume you've got experience of running HMOs.
Not myself, I'm an architect now.
What would be the? I mean, the question we've raised is the kitchen facilities. What is a desirable ratio between rooms and kitchen facilities? Because I'm unclear whether we've got 2 kitchens or 3. The report says 2, but we've now heard that there might be 3 kitchens. What's the desired ratio?
So the building is broken up into 3 sections in terms of the kitchen allocation. The ratio and the sizing of those kitchens, again, is dictated by the HMO licensing requirement. And that's why we've made the alterations to the building we've made to meet those requirements.
Just to clarify sorry.
Ms. Parsons would like to come in again here, just 1 second.
Sorry, just to clarify again that issues such as the amenity, the provision, the living accommodation is all matters that are considered under the licensing regime and not planning. Planning considers the external fabric of the building, the use of the building, the external amenity space and the specifics, not the size of the rooms, etc., and the specifics of that. And it is important, whilst the 2 regimes work together, it's important that we consider the specifics under planning and the specifics under licensing at the appropriate time to do that. Possibly to pick up as well around the specifics of the circular and to come back to maybe to Councillor Beattie's point about concentrations. It is an interesting point. So the specifics of the circular are probably something that's picked up in planning policy. So maybe where you get a proliferation of a lot of HMOs, it's very much aimed at that, to look at whether a local authority might want to impose some sort of control around that. There's nothing specific and there's not any cases I'm aware of where you've got one big multi-user in terms of an HMO. It's not something specific to that, so there's a wee bit of a distinction, but it's quite a unique case in terms of that specifically.
Thank you.
Right, just before Councillor Brace comes in, can I remind anybody online to mute the microphone, please, because I'm hearing voices coming through that shouldn't be there. I should also say as well, we actually do have members of the agents or the applicants here as well that that may want to answer questions rather than just Mr. Fretwell. I'll just bring that in. But firstly, Councillor Brace.
Yes, convener. I sit in the Civic Licensing Committee and I have to tell you that I'm getting a wee bit uncomfortable. This is the Development Standards Committee, and I really feel that members of this committee are going to stray away from planning matters and into the business of the Civic Licensing Committee. I might be better to recuse myself from this meeting. So I really hope that members will stick to the planning issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Brace, and that kind of falls on me to act on this one and remind people that, again, we're talking about the actual use and listening carefully to what Ms. Parsons has said is about what we're here to decide today. Thanks very much, Councillor Brace. Is there any other questions all for the applicant's agent? No? Okay. We do have, I think, Mr. Keane and also Mr. Howitt, I think, online.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Mr. Keane. Good morning to you. Are you open to taking questions?
Sure. I'll powers and understanding of the NPF4 framework. I will attempt to answer any questions. I am in a loud environment, so apologies for any background.
Okay, I think we just go on to questions. Is there any questions from members for the actual applicants themselves? Okay, I'm going to just bring up one, Mr. Keane, and you're not coming through very clearly, so if you just might slow your speech down so we can hear properly on it. And the question I really had is in relation to the company itself. That has been, the development group has only been established for a year. Do you have experience of running HMOs already, or what experience can you bring to this?
So we do not have any experience with regards to HMOs. However, I manage multiple leisure facilities across the country, including one of the largest eco facilities in the UK at the National Exhibition Centre. So I have a lot of experience with regards to operations, development, and stuff like that. So we do not have background experience within the HMO space. We are looking to partner with charities. This is more of a landlord/FRI type setup. We work together with the likes of Veterans Off the Street, or we work together with the Erskine facilities, who have all of the experience in taking care of the individuals who are going to be potentially housing. So I know that this is not a planning, this is not a youth meeting, but so far we do not have any any focus on asylum seeking and stuff like that. So once we can call that out one more time so that it's very clear, there's been a lot of noise in the background with regards to that. So just want to kind of make that statement here.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
Sorry, I wonder if I might just comment that the suitability of the applicant as regards an HMO licence is a licensing matter.
I kind of thought that myself. Okay, right. Okay, I think on the basis of that we have exhausted questions for the applicant's agent and for the applicants. Right, we'll move straight to comments at this stage from members. And Councillor Councillor Nicholson, apologies. Please, you can start off.
Thank you very much. There are various NFP4 policies would be to do with this property, but to summarise it, this would have a detrimental impact on the character of the area and the neighbouring properties. So I would be against. Thank you.
Councillor Clark, sorry.
And good morning again. Convener, I've been very, very careful not to stray anywhere because I sit on two, just like Councillor Brace and indeed my colleague. I sit on licensing as well. So I've been very, very quiet in that respect, unusually for me. But I will back up happily how I feel about a site visit. I think it's very necessary for the reasons I've given, but I can come back and give you more if you need it. But the first reason being, we don't all know the site. Nothing to do with the inside or what it's used for. You need to see it in the context of the unique loch, etc. So if I need to expand on that, I will, Convener. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you very much. At this point, I do not see any material planning considerations that would mean I would definitely be against this application. However, I would also trust the local councillor's knowledge of the area, so I would be happy to back Councillor Clark's call for a site visit if that's what she would like. Thank you.
Can I just come in for a second here? I hear what you're both saying. You know, I think I've made clear before myself, and I know we've got our next application kind of broke the mould on this one. But as convener, I always expect council committee members to have visited and attended sites for the applications. So while I'm hearing about a site visit, I will put that to a vote of members whether they feel that's necessary or not, or whether they feel through the papers that have been provided to them already, with all the representations, with what's been provided by council officers in a display today, whether they feel they have sufficient information to make a decision today, or do they feel they want to defer to a site visit. So I'm going to take any other comments first, and then we'll wrap up with that before we move on any further after that. Have any members other than Councillor Clark and Councillor Kerry, got any comments on this application as it stands at the moment? Right, well, Councillor Duff, we've now got the video. I'm kind of a bit frightened that it sticks again and we have to start all over again, but do we want to see the video? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. I think that's fine. Thanks very much for that. Do you want to cable that off there? Okay, sorry, Councillor Duff, go ahead.
I'm sort of asking myself the thought experiment. If this was a new build application coming to us, and we looked at this facility, then the kitchen accommodation would be relevant. We would say, well, that looks like a shortage of kitchen. That's a planning matter, surely. So if it was a new build, we would say that's not adequate. In the same way that if we had a house application for a 8-bedroom house and there was only one parking space, we would say, well, that's not adequate. We've got a metric we use to determine whether there's enough parking spaces. I think for this one, which is a multiple use of a house, the kitchen facilities are important. I mean, I raised the parallel before with university accommodation. Now, when I went to university, which wasn't yesterday, most university accommodation of this sort would have been about 6 rooms per kitchen. And I think I've stayed in some modern ones, and they're the same ratio. Having a 19 or even if we say that there are 3, you know, something like 10 per kitchen, it seems like insufficient. And so if this was a new application, we would say, no, it's not adequate. Now we're being told, this was a care home, and all we're doing is replacing old people with working age people. It'll be okay. And it's care homes run in a completely different way from the intended use of this. If they could cook in the rooms, that might be acceptable, but we've heard that because of the fire regulations, that's not desirable. I think, for me, if someone's going to tell me that the licensing committee will look, no, we're only going to allow 15 people in here, then maybe it's okay. But for me, 38 with 3 kitchens is not sensible. I wouldn't want to stay there, and I wouldn't want anybody I knew staying there. But if you're going to tell us that licensing will have a look at this and say, no, it's not adequate, and reduce the number of people who can stay there, then that might be acceptable. So I've never sat in licensing. I don't know what they do, but I don't know how many. We don't have a lot of experience of HMOs because we don't have many. But that would be my comment.
Yeah, Sam, do you want did you want to come in? I saw your hand up.
Yeah, just would like to clarify that point. If this was a brand new application, again, we would still be looking at the land use. We would obviously be looking at the design of the building itself. But in terms of the suitability of the occupation as an HMO, that would still remain with the licensing board. So we wouldn't get into detail about looking at the number of users to kitchen ratio. That again would be with licensing, and potentially even building standards would look at that. So it wouldn't be a planning matter.
Yeah, I think the greater question here is, oh, who's got the hand up? That's Anne. I think the greater question here, as I say, is the actual building, the fabric, etc. I take the point, though. I think this is a very fine line. Councillor Reedy.
Thanks, Convener. I'm a wee bit confused about this as well, because we looked at, I think it was an HMO in Montrose, where bathroom facilities were very much part of the design, the internal design of the property. I don't see the difference between what happened there and what happened here. The facilities have got to be suitable for the people that live in them. They've got their own amenity, and it doesn't matter what it's being used for or who's using them. They've got their own amenity that we need to consider.
Yeah, just to clarify, we don't, in all planning matters, we don't look at the specific internal layouts that are submitted to aid information. They're not their specifics. We don't determine the size of whether someone's bedroom is big enough for their purpose. There's other regulations and things such as building standards that are in place to do that. And I know it is quite difficult when you've got different complementary regimes that deal with different matters. Planning, I always say, is specific to the use and the impact of those specifics. So we will look at things like external bin storage, because there's an impact of that from an external fabric aspect to that. But I know it is quite difficult when you get into the specifics, but there's lots of applications we get that, even as an officer, I would sometimes go, but that's not our role to do that. It's just to help sometimes aid the layout and specifics, so you can kind of see if that's a 3-bedroom property, etc. We then get, people do things like converting box rooms, etc. to bedrooms. That again is not something that's picked up by ourselves. There are other regimes that pick that up.
Thank you, Convener. In terms of the licensing regime, it does consider the suitability of the property itself for use as an HMO, and as well as the suitability of the licence applicant to be the holder of such a licence, and number of residents would be considered as a matter for the licensing committee, as well as the I suppose, internal layout, the facilities provided within the property.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, this planning application come to us to consider the change from a Class 8 to an HMO. So we're deciding here today whether it will be an HMO or not. Okay. Are there any other comments from online or from in the chamber from members? Mr. Fretwell, you can't come back, I'm afraid. You've had your chance for a say from members. Now, okay, at this point then, in that case, if there's no other comments, normally I would sum up and come up with a motion here. But Councillor Clark and Councillor Cowdery have mentioned the idea of a site visit. My view in this case is it's not necessary. I think we've got sufficient information in my mind on the application as to whether it's appropriate for it to be an HMO or not. But I'm happy to put that to a vote here, reminding everybody again that if there's a site visit, then all must attend or they exclude themselves from a future decision. It would defer the decision from today. So I'm going to take it on the basis that Councillor Clark is moving that idea. And my amendment is that we don't proceed with the site visit and we move with it and move on to our decision today. Fiona?
Councillor Clark, do you have a seconder for your motion? So that's Councillor Cowdery.
Yes, I do. Councillor Cowdery.
And there's an amendment by Councillor Cheap.
Councillor Nichols, second. Councillor Brace, do you want to come in?
Well, it was just the second year amendment.
I think Councillor Nicholl's done that. So, committee, we've got a motion before you, moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Cowdy, that the site visit takes place to visit the proposed 3-bedroomed house, 38-bedroomed house in multiple occupation at the Lochbank, Graham Crescent, Forfar, proposed. And there's amendment moved by Councillor Cheap, seconded by Councillor Gavin Nicholl, that no site visit takes place and to consider the application today. So if members could vote for motion or amendment. Convener?
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren?
Amendment.
Councillor Beattie?
Motion.
Councillor Braze?
Amendment.
Councillor Clark?
Motion.
Councillor Cowdy?
Motion.
Councillor Duff?
Motion.
Councillor Meehan?
Motion.
Councillor Gavin Nicholl?
Amendment.
And Councillor Stewart?
Amendment.
We've got 5 for the motion and 5 for the amendment. Therefore, the convener has the casting vote.
Okay, if it was more conclusive, I would have gone with it. If it's a joint house, we'll go. Happy to go with the motion, and we'll have a site visit in that case. Seems fair.
Very grateful, convener.
Therefore, the motion's carried. Committee.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay, at this point, we will decide off committee when that site visit will take place, and this application post that site visit will come back to Development Standards Committee for onward discussion and decision. Okay, thank you everyone on this one. Thank you also to members of the public and Mr. Gardner for speaking. It'll be an unaccompanied site visit. I'm moving in that case as well. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gardner. And for any members of the public, you're free to leave now if you wish to. You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. We're now going time-wise. Can I just call a 5-minute recess, I think, in that case, just for a comfort break for anybody who wants it? Yeah, and yes, and all the people.
Live stream, pause the live stream just now, please.
Yes.
5 minutes.
Right, thanks everybody. We'll carry on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 7 relates to report 123/26, which is, we're kind of reconvening on this one. Planning application 25/00244, full, submitted on behalf of Fraser Commercial Group Limited for the change of use of the old Ropeworks building into domestic storage space, a yoga studio with wellness consultation room, and conversion of small outbuildings to hairdressers at the old Ropeworks in Bench Road, Montrose. This meeting is reconvening on this matter following the site visit earlier this year, and for the avoidance of doubt, due to them not being able to attend the site visit, Councillors Duff, Meakin, Melville and Councillor Nicholl are unable to take part in the continued debate and decision on this application. So I'm going to pass over to Mr Taylor to carry on where we left off. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms Ramsey, apologies for that.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, so the application was deferred at the meeting of the Development Standards Committee on the 18th of November last year for a site visit to be undertaken and to allow for the submission of a detailed travel plan. The site visit was carried out on Thursday, 22nd of January this year, and the applicant has now submitted a detailed travel plan, a travel information pack and a complaints management procedure. These have been looked over both by the planning service and our roads colleagues who are content with the requirements, content with the information submitted and would address the requirements of condition 2A, which was listed in the previous report. As such, the planning service would recommend that the condition 2A is removed and replaced by a standalone condition to ensure that the travel plan is fully implemented. I don't know if members want just a recap. So as a C-listed building, the site is located adjacent to the conservation area and it can be accessed from both Bench Road and Union Street. So this was the original site plan that members seen back in November, and as a result of the travel plan, there's been an amended site plan submitted which shows 2 loading bays and a turning circle to the north of the site and 2 loading bays and a turning circle to the south. There is also bike storage of 8 racks, which has been relocated from, hopefully you see my cursor here, over on the right hand side of the screen to the left of the site here. So this was the original ground floor plan. And the amended ground floor plan, it's really just shown the coloured units for the Class 6 storage with an area now disused, which is the very end of the very long Ropeworks building. And again, on the first floor, again, it's been colour coded, which shows the yoga room and consultation studio in turquoise, the storage area in green, and then the hairdressers and the external standalone building in grey. The comprehensive travel plan sets out how to travel to and from the site, how it will be managed, monitored, reviewed and controlled. The planning service and roads are content with the travel plan and recommend that the application be approved in line with the recommendations in the report. Thank you. Members have any questions?
Thanks, Ms. Sand, for the updates. I think we're kind of familiar now, but I do appreciate the updated visuals there. Do any members have any questions for Ms. Ramsey, having heard this today? No? Okay. We actually also have online Grace Woods, the agent for the applicant. I know you're there, Ms. Wick, I can see you on camera. You're open for questions, I take it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, it may or may not be. You may not get any, or you may get some. Is there any questions for the applicant in relation to the application? No? Okay, thanks very much. Right, on the basis of that, do we have any comments? Councillor Beattie.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yeah, just glad to see the travel plan, and that's clarified up a lot of the issues. So with that in place, I'd be happy to support this.
Councillor Clark.
Same reason. We went on a site visit, said very useful, but the travel plan ameliorates, in my mind, the concerns that people had in their representation. So I'm happy to second that.
Okay. Councillor Cowdery.
Yep, absolutely in the same vein. I appreciate the effort people went to organise the site visit for us. Thank you very much. It clarified various things for me, and the travel plan is most welcome, so I'm happy to approve. Thank you.
Mr McLaren.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, likewise, I fully support this application now.
And finally, Councillor Brays.
Yes, thanks, Convener. Previously, this was quite a difficult one for me. But having had the site visit and seen this travel plan and the conditions, particularly the conditions, I'm much more comfortable with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Brays. And that's everybody who is able to speak other than myself. So just to sum up on this one, I don't intend to dwell any further on the application. The site visit proved very helpful in discussions with local members, provided a useful historical background to previous site usage and access, and alleviated a few of my concerns. We now have a detailed travel plan, travel information pack and complaints management procedure, and an amended site plan, all submitted by the applicant. That said, I do still have some concerns re access and parking. Roads colleagues have again referred to the availability of sustainable travel and the use of public transport for potential users of facilities that are proposed at this site. However, we have to remember that many users here will be using these storage facilities to drop off or collect potentially sizable items, furniture, boxes, etc. It's unrealistic to think they will use public transport to do so. That said, there is the drop-off points, and in the balance of judgment, believe the two entrances will provide opportunity for drop-off, as we've seen in the slides, and collect facility. Users of the yoga and well-being studios would, I hope, use sustainable travel or public transport, as there is no parking for them on site. Accordingly, all things considered, I'm going to move to approve the application subject to the conditions stated in report 319/25 as amended by the conditions stated in this report 123/26. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Beattie. And I'm taking there are no amendments. Good, thank you. Planning application number 25/00244 Pool is hereby approved, subject to the amended conditions as circulated to members. Thank you, everyone. Right, agenda item 8 relates to report 124. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to bring back our other members. We'll take a further 5-minute recess just to bring the members back. Thank you.
If you pause the stream for 5 minutes.
Right, everyone, thank you. Welcome back to Development Standards. The agenda item 8 today relates to report 124/26 and deals with planning application 26/00014 FULM for the erection of warehousing, offices, business units, a new entrance roundabout and associated works at the former training centre, Forties Road Industrial Estate, Montrose. And I'll pass on to Mr. Taylor.
Thanks, Convener, and good morning, members. As you've alluded to, item 8 is a major planning application which deals with a redevelopment proposal of employment land in Montrose for the erection of warehouse, office and business units with associated works, including new access, roundabout and associated works on the site of the former training centre at Forties Road in Montrose. So on the left-hand side, we have an extract from the Angus Local Development Plan map for Montrose, which shows the land allocations within the town. And we can see at the top of the slide, at the northern edge of the town, is the application site identified by the red star. And you can see that the site is covered by a pink-coloured shading. That means that land within the site, areas to the south and west of the site, are all safeguarded for employment purposes. So employment purposes, what we mean by that is uses within classes 4, 5 and 6 of the use classes order, so light industrial, general industrial and storage and distribution type uses. You can also see to the east of the site we have a pink hatched area. That's the Montrose Airfield site, so that's identified as a future site for employment land. So there is a character in this part of the northern part of Montrose for employment development, either existing or foreseen by the land use strategy for the town. If we move to the right-hand side, we have a bit more detail of the application site, approximately identified by the red dashed line. On the right of that, we can see 2 green arrows. They represent the proposed site access points. So at the bottom right, or the southeast of the site, we have a proposal for a new roundabout access into the site that would be from the A92 Charlton Road. And we have an existing access which was previously used to access the former maternity hospital at Charlton. That would be reused as part of the development, and the detailed sort of gatepost features, which are quite attractive in that area, would also be incorporated into the development. The site's currently accessed from the southwest from Forties Road. As part of the proposal, that access would be altered, so it would no longer be a vehicular access into the site. That would become a pedestrian and cycle access connecting to existing routes into the town. I think there's a bus stop close to the Builders Merchant further to the south, as well as bus connections adjacent to Charlton Place, which again, just further to the south out with the slide in this general location down here. But in terms of the principle of development, the application proposes uses within classes 4, 5 and 6. National Planning Framework for Policy is supportive of business and industry uses on sites allocated for those purposes in the development plan. And as indicated, this area of land is safeguarded for those purposes in the Angus Local Development Plan. So the principle of developing safeguarded employment land for employment purposes is supported by development plan policy, subject to detailed considerations, which I'll touch upon in subsequent slides. So in terms of what's involved, on the left-hand side, we have the proposed site plan. We can see 4 red shaded units. They would be warehouse buildings with associated yards located and occupying most of the development within the site. We would also have a 3-storey office building constructed to the south with associated car park in the area where my cursor shows. And we would have 20 smaller business units formed to the north of the site. I think they're approximately 88 square metres for each particular unit. Within the site, we'd also have areas of existing landscaping retained along the Charlton Road boundary. There's an existing stone boundary wall which runs along that development, that side of the development. That will be retained and incorporated into the scheme to sort of retain an attractive frontage to the site. There will be 3 areas where sustainable drainage is proposed, one in the northeast corner, one to the east and one at the southeast corner, as shown in the lighter shade of green. The development would also incorporate a new pumping station to take foul drainage from the development into the wastewater treatment system. But the drainage arrangements for the site are, as would be expected, surface water will be dealt with by sustainable drainage, and foul drainage will be dealt with in terms of a connection to the public sewer. So in terms of the development plan detailed policy considerations, policies in both NPF4 and the ALDP contain a number of topic areas that we need to consider, and I've touched upon those on the right hand side. In terms of amenity, we're about 360 metres from the nearest house on Charlton Place, which is just out of the slide to the south. Consultation with colleagues in environmental health, satisfied in discussions with that party that we can control potential noise impacts both from construction and operation of the site, and conditions are in the papers to deal with that matter. In terms of traffic and transport, the applicant has submitted a transport assessment which deals with matters relating to the suitability of the site access points and capacity of the road network. That has been completed to a methodology acceptable to our colleagues in roads. The application has been subject to consultation with both Transport Scotland and with the road service. No objection from either party, subject to conditions that deal with a number of detailed matters. In terms of other infrastructure impacts, there will be a number of works required to deal with former contaminants of the site. The applicant has provided contaminated land information. Again, there's been discussions between SEPA, between the council's contaminated land officer and the applicant's agent to deal with those matters, and conditions are proposed to deal with land contamination. And it's understood there would require to be some level changes within the site as part of that remediation. I think the site level would increase between 1 and 2 metres in terms of an increase in height within the site. In terms of drainage matters, Scottish Water has been consulted on the application and have no objection, noting that the proposal would separate surface water from foul flows from the development. In terms of built environment considerations, there's no particular concerns in relating to cultural heritage. Archaeology has offered no objection. I've asked for no mitigation. The design and layout is very much what you would expect from employment land, functional or utilitarian type buildings, but provided with some surveillance of the routes through the site where possible. In terms of biodiversity matters, there would be some limited tree felling required around the point of the site access for the roundabout at the southeast, and in terms of providing the pumping station and drainage to the northeast of the site. Planning conditions are proposed to ensure that suitable biodiversity net gain is provided within the site, to ensure that retained trees are suitably safeguarded, and suitable proposals for replanting are provided as part of the development. But in general terms, this is an application which has no objections from technical consultees. The responses of consultees are summarised in section 6, and any conditions they have requested are provided in detail at section 10. So I've just got some images of the site now and some plans of the buildings which are proposed. So this is an aerial photograph looking to the south. So we can see the site identified broadly by the position of the dashed red line. We have the location of the proposed new access, which I think currently accommodates a lay-by on the A92. As part of the planning permission, conditions require the existing 30 mph speed limit, which is approximately in this location, to be relocated around about 650 metres to the north, which would then allow it to encompass the visibility splay at the northerlymost site access into the proposal. But the road service is satisfied with those arrangements, as are Transport Scotland. Much of the site has already been cleared from its previous uses. There are some buildings which remain at the southern end of the site that would be removed to accommodate development. Turning the other way, we can see the buildings that would require to be removed at the bottom of the photograph. Much of the site to the north has already been cleared. The site represents the northern boundary of the town, so there is important to ensure a suitable transition between the urban area of Montrose and the rural area. And in that regard, there is a beech hedge lined access driveway which was used to access the former Charlton Maternity Hospital. The southern part of that beech hedge would require to be removed, but it's considered possible to retain the northern part of the beech hedge and augment that with new planting, just to ensure that transition between urban and rural, and to create a defensible boundary for the town, as is envisaged by policy. Just some quick slides to show elevations and have some 3D images. So the buildings are designed very much as what you would expect to see on allocated employment land, sort of functional style buildings. 3D image at the bottom shows one of the buildings towards the south of the site. This is the office building, which will be located to the south of the site, so accommodation on 3 levels, with a parking area which would incorporate features such as vehicle charging, disabled parking and bike parking as part of the scheme. And the business units, which will be located to the north of the site, there will be 20 units provided in 4 buildings, each containing 5 units. You can see the 3D image just to give a better impression of how they would appear in the view. And just a few 3D images provided by the applicant, they're quite helpful. This is looking from the north to the south, so you can see the smaller scale business units at the north of the site in the foreground, and some of the large industrial style buildings located further to the south. On the right hand side we have the large yard which would accommodate or serve the building which is located in the southwest corner of the site. In terms of the entrance features, you can see in the foreground the existing stone wall would be incorporated into a new entrance feature into the site to provide a sort of fairly attractive entrance to the development. Parking area located on the left, industrial units, storage and distribution units located on the right with associated yard area. And this is the adapted, altered access to the north of the site, which is the former maternity hospital access point, with the gate posts retained into the scheme. So the development tries to, as far as it can for an industrial park, retain the features of the site which provide an attractive approach to the town, and the applicants made a reasonable attempt to deliver what they're trying to achieve, but also sort of protecting the landscape setting of the site and the northern part of the town. So, just in summary, this is a proposal for employment development on land which is safeguarded for that function in the development plan. There are no objections to the proposal from technical consultees, and we have no third-party representations to the proposal. Conditions are detailed at section 10 of the report, which regulate impacts where they're considered necessary by officers or by consultees. The application is considered to comply with the policies of the development plan. There are no material considerations in the opinion of officers which would justify refusal of planning permission, and on that basis it's recommended for conditional approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Taylor. Questions from Mr. and we'll start with Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you very much. So my question relates to 8.17 and 8.18 regarding the trees and the biodiversity. I welcome the condition that you're proposing, which essentially says there should be a baseline of biodiversity currently taken and then a quantifiable gain that is outlined. I guess I'm surprised that that isn't already something that people have to do when they are putting together planning applications. And I just wondered if I'm correct in saying that they don't have to do it, and if we can perhaps ask them to do it in the future so that we're not reactively trying to pin them down, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think everything we do is a judgment on significance. I think were the impacts likely to be more significant, then we probably would have looked for that to be absolutely pinned down at this stage in the process. But the information available to us suggests there is a fairly negligible impact on landscaping and biodiversity, and on that basis we considered it pragmatic in this case just to deal with that after the event. But if it was more significant impact, then absolutely we would ask for that, and certainly we can take that on board in terms of future considerations.
Just as a follow-up, so I guess what I'm asking is, no matter how significant or insignificant, could we just get that in as a baseline at the beginning, where we have to say, they have to tell us what the biodiversity value is at the beginning and how exactly they will have improved it by the end, kind of regardless of planning application?
Yeah, comments noted.
Okay, Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener, and thanks for the presentation. It's been an issue in Montrose for a great number of decades with the handling of sewage. The main sewer lines running from Burrowfield towards West End Park are inadequate, and in fairness, Scottish Water have now accepted that, have a plan in progress in planning which should start in June to alleviate this problem. And every time there is a development in this part of town, the people who've been impacted by this problem have said, we don't want any more development because that will put additional pressure on the sewage system. So I guess my question really is, have we looked at this, and are we sure that we aren't going to put any more pressure on the wastewater system flowing from the Burrowfield Forties Road area towards the south, which is the area that obviously Scottish Water are going to do £10 million worth of work to try and alleviate. So that's my question, effectively.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Duff. Yeah, so the applicant has produced a drainage strategy which has been submitted as part of the application and considered by consultees, including the council's roads drainage, flooding and drainage team and colleagues in Scottish Water. Neither party has offered any objections subject to conditions. I think it's important to note that the site separates out surface water drainage from foul drainage, and you saw in the slide there were 3 ponds proposed, or 3 features proposed to deal with surface water drainage. So really, beyond acknowledging the comments of Scottish Water, who are satisfied there is capacity in the system, I can't really go much further. That might be something the applicant's agent might comment upon. If you ask them in subsequent slides, they may or may not be able to provide more information, but certainly the impression I've been given is that has been considered and the consultees are satisfied that's addressed. Okay, thanks very much. That's reassuring, but it'd be useful to hear from the applicant's agent as well, get his views.
Thanks, Councillor. We'll get to them in due course. Councillor Beattie.
Yeah, thanks. Just to follow on the back of what Councillor Cowdery said about trees and everything that else is there. I recall back in around about 2010, some lizard surveys being done by actually Angus Council employees as well, and volunteers from Aberdeen University. Can we make sure that that's incorporated into that site as well? Because it's a very local population. I think it's the only one regarded on the east of the A90.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Beattie. Yeah, certainly that can be raised. I mean, the work we're asking the applicant to do would require them to establish a baseline with survey information, and we're aware there's blizzards in that part of Montrose, something we've thought about for the airfield site as well. But certainly we'll make sure that's raised with the applicant in terms of the discharge of that condition.
Thanks.
Hey, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Convener. Mr Taylor, just when I'm reading through, and I did notice this earlier, I'm always concerned about the construction time and the hours. And that's earlier on. And then when we go to page 733B, there's a noise management plan. Now, that's great. Really pleased to hear that. Does that cover the time for the construction as well? Because the hours are long. It's 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night, Monday to Friday. It changes on a Saturday and there's nothing on a Sunday or public holidays. But it's just a question, if you wouldn't mind. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your question. So when we're considering construction noise, we're really thinking about that to be covered by condition 5, so the specific construction noise condition. I think the thinking behind the noise management plan is it's really intended to deal with operational noise rather than construction noise. But the site is a reasonable distance from the nearest residential receptors. We're satisfied, having regard to the advice from my colleagues in environmental health, that the control we propose is sufficient in the context of where the site is relative to sensitive receptors. Hopefully that's some reassurance to you.
Fine, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. If there's no other questions for Mr Taylor, we do have David Payton on behalf, the agent on behalf of the applicant, and also Gavin Park from Fairhurst online. Gentlemen, I think yeah, there we are. You're open to questions, I believe. So I think when we start with that from Councillor Duff. Councillor, but do you want to just clarify, Councillor Duff, any questions for either gentleman?
Yeah. Thanks. Good morning. Yeah, the point the point I'm raising really is that there has been and there is concern from residents in the sort of Burrowfield, Graham Crescent area in Montrose about any developments that increase the load on the sewage system running from Burrowfield to the West End Park, which is the main sewer line to in that part of town. So really just an assurance that you've looked at that and that the load on that pipeline, albeit the situation is going to be improved by putting in a massive storage tank to deal with heavy rainfall, just an assurance that that's been looked at and there is no additional load on that pipeline. I guess is my question.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Duff. So yeah, during the consultation period for the major application, we done some extensive sort of consultations with the public in various locations around the town. One in particular gentleman came along who has been campaigning for several decades, I believe, on the issues with drainage through the sort of north to south drainage of Montrose. Now, discussions were had with him, and he kind of he made clear what the issues were, and we were able to work with him to ensure that what we were doing on this site wouldn't have any adverse impact on the existing system, in fact have a benefit. So effectively, by creating the suds ponds on the site, we remove completely the surface water from the existing drainage system through Montrose. And what we also do is, because we're effectively proposing large warehousing structures here, there's going to be a lot less toilet provisions in the buildings than there is currently. So the sort of foul sewage will be lessened as well on the site. So we feel that we've covered that and improved the situation through that existing system through the town. Gavin can perhaps offer a more technical response to this, but that's what we found from our consultations with the community and the work we've done so far.
Yeah, I can add to that. Thanks, David, and thanks, Councillor, for the question. The biggest issue that all towns face is surface water coming into the combined sewer network, and it is a combined sewer network that runs through Montrose, an old combined sewer network. So therefore, removal of surface water can only enhance the existing drainage network through Montrose, and would hopefully mitigate against any and free up capacity for to reduce the impact on the existing problems which Scottish Water are currently looking at. But this development will certainly remove any existing surface water flows which were currently going into that combined sewer and deal with them separately. So and it is a reduced foul flow from, as David said, from the redeveloped site. So that was the argument, and that's the basis of the drainage strategy, which has been agreed with Scottish Water, and that's how we intend taking it forward, and what the Scottish Water approval is based on at this stage, to remove that surface water element.
If I could just come in, Mr. Park, and just been listening to what you're saying there, I get the bit about the surface water, but how do you balance and say the reduced foul waste? But surely there's much greater activity going to be taken on this site when you see the size of the development and the level of number of people that will be working there. I would have thought, how do you justify reduction in that?
Yeah, there are. I mean, it looks like we're redeveloping the site quite a bit. These buildings are big warehouse buildings. They've got limited scope for welfare facilities within the buildings because they're not hugely staffed. The office building, yes, the office building is on 3 levels, and it's a very similar number of occupancy that the buildings on the site currently take. So there's no intention to increase the capacity, certainly, than what's there just now. The volumes that we've taken for the assessment at this stage are slightly less than the current occupancy of the site. Because these buildings are big, but like I say, some of them they're just big warehouses. They're very limited welfare and facilities within the buildings themselves.
Yeah, and just to jump in as well, the existing buildings on the site are all office buildings, so they do have quite a heavy load in terms of their current foul drainage. So yeah, reiterate what Gavin's saying there. There will be certainly not any increase in the foul drainage into the site and into the existing sewer system.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant's agents? No? Okay, that's fine. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move straight to comments in that case then from members on this application. Councillor Stewart, you're first off.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I'm happy to see this application come forward. Listening to all the different comments that's been made already. The road access is going to be greatly improved, and it was good to see that the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit would be extended. I've previously had quite a number of complaints from residents in nearby Charlton Road area of vehicles, so it would be good to see that getting extended. Montrose is screaming out for office space and warehousing, and this is obviously going to help that. It's a huge footprint capable of supporting this as well. We've got to remember Montrose is a major player in you know, the renewables, the gas, the oil. Companies, they want to relocate to Montrose. And in regards to the foul waste, we need to be mindful that previously, you know, going back in the last 20 years, this site was a huge facility for the oil industry, when it was a training site, and it accommodated, you know, 200 people, 300 people every day using, you know, the toilets and whatever, and that was, you know, just people coming in for training courses, and you had all your office staff over and above that. So I've got no doubt that, you know, the site is capable of accommodating that. Yeah, very happy to see this come forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, and thanks for the background there, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Braze?
Well, just largely to echo what Councillor Stewart has said, this is a fantastic thing for not just for the town of Montrose, but the whole of North Angus, because it drives industry, it drives commerce, and it drives prosperity, extending well into Aberdeenshire as well, which is really just hundreds of yards across the river from where this is, and Montrose to a large extent depends on residents of the Barns and the coastal villages of Aberdeenshire to come and spend money in Montrose. So it's a great thing. Following on from Councillor Cowdy, and this baselining of biodiversity, I think that's really is the way that we should be going these days. So pleased to hear about that. This is a redevelopment. It is a considerable site. It has by its nature to be functional and utilitarian, but that should not mean that it's just a barren, sterile site. And so pleased to see that there's going to be great consideration given so that we do get a gain in biodiversity from what is proposed to go ahead. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Brace. Councillor Duff?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yeah, I mean, when I first came to Montrose, which was about 40 years ago, the daily fires and smoke coming from the oil training centre were a feature of life, and it was usually the same time every day, the plumes of smoke. So I don't know what that did for biodiversity, but that was how it was. It was a training centre, as Councillor Stewart has said. Large numbers of people attended it every day. So I think the argument that the footfall on the site now will be flight site plan will be massively reduced from what it was in the heyday as a training for. I think there's a lot of good things. The access of Charlton Road via the new roundabout is ideal. It's good. It takes some of the traffic off the internal roads of the Forties Road Industrial Estate. The 20 business units, small business units, that's excellent. That's something that Montrose needs. And obviously, this is a part of the port's master plan to get the businesses out of the quayside area to somewhere where they can operate in modern facilities, and that clears the quayside for other businesses that really need to be on the quayside. So a big opportunity for the port. As people have said, a good development in Montrose. and a significant expansion in warehousing in this area. So, yeah, I'm fully supportive of it, and I'm very relieved to hear the reassurance about the drainage situation, which, having heard from Mr. Payton and the other gentleman, I think I'm quite comfortable that that's been properly looked at and we won't have any problems. So, yeah, thoroughly welcome it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Any other comments to finalise, or are we all happy? Okay, again, to sum up then, the majority of the site is contained within the development boundary controls on land safeguarded for employment purposes in the local development plan under policy TC14. MPF 4 policy 26A indicates that development proposals for business and industry uses on sites allocated for those in the LDP will be supported. TC14 directs class 4, 5 and 6 uses to employment land allocations and existing employment areas where infrastructure, connectivity and accessibility transport networks by walking, cycling and public transport and workforce are readily available, whilst also helping to protect local employment opportunities. The traffic impacts can be adequately integrated with suitable planning conditions and provision of the travel plan, and development appears to have little negative residential amenity subject to appropriate planning conditions. The information is submitted in support of the application, and the response from consultees suggests that the development would not give rise to unacceptable impacts on infrastructure or amenity or other environmental interests subject to appropriate mitigation. The development appears to be generally welcomed, and as the proposal complies with relevant policies of the development plan and there are no material considerations that justify a refusal, I'm going to move to approve the application subject to the extensive conditions stated in the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Beattie? No amendments, I'd imagine. So planning application number 26/00014/FULM is hereby approved, subject to the conditions stated in the report. Thank you. Right, agenda item 9 relates to report 125/26 and the report advisors committee of a proposal application notice reference 26/00209/PAN submitted by Angus Land Company in respect of a major development for formation of an 18-hole championship golf course, hotel, spa, leisure, conference lodges and residential plots on land at Shankabamaki Wellbank. Committee is invited to identify any issues which it would like to see addressed in the planning application that is subsequently submitted and that could be added to those shown in paragraph 4.7 of the report on page 805 of our papers. In light of the report, is there any issues that any members wish to add to the list, or as I say, shown in paragraph 4.7, or are we content with the content? Councillor Beattie.
Thanks, Camilla. Yeah, just a minor thing. Although it does state natural environment considerations, including the impact on habitats and species and edges, things like that, I'd like to see something included in there, if possible, for the potential for nature network connectivity, because there are existing areas surrounding the site that can be connected with good design through the site.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, I agree with that one. Is there anything else anybody wants to raise? Councillor Duff?
Just scanning the sort of points on under 4.7, are we proposing to look at bus networks at all? Because I'm conscious that there's going to be a significant number of people employed here, and it's not a million miles from Dundee, let's face it. That would be, I would have thought it would have been something we would have been wanting to look at.
Thanks, noted, Councillor Duff. I think part of it, clearly the travel plan will be central to all of this as well. Is there anything else? Just out of interest on it all, I know it's the point of adding, but on the extent of the development is sizable as we can see, and I imagine there will be some shall we say, sizable consideration on the amount of arable class 1 land that will be developed by all of this. I think it's worthy of some form of note in regard to that, because that will clearly come up as an issue in the planning application. Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you. It's just mindful of what planning officers told us regarding the last application. This is obviously very, very substantial in scale. So if we can have the baselining and the quantifiable biodiversity enhancement as core to this entire thing, that would be great. Thank you.
I think, Ms. Patton, maybe we could just ask yourself, if you don't mind. Just again, for this element here, it obviously comes to development standards for consideration of any issues. Bearing in mind this is a major planning application involved here, can you just advise again, do we think this will come back to development standards, or could this possibly come to full council? Or Mr. Taylor?
That's Mr. Taylor to pick that up.
It's a good question. I don't want to prejudice what the consideration of that would be. So I suppose in short, if it's deemed to be a significant departure from the development plan, it would need to be decided by full council. If it's not considered to be a significant departure from the development plan, it would come to development standards. So I'm really reluctant to prejudice what a judgment on that matter might be. I think there's a reasonable chance that it will be full council, it's fair to say.
Right, are we all content in that case with the points? Thanks for your contribution on that one. Agenda item 10 relates to report 12626, and report presents the findings of the reporter appointed by Scottish Minister to determine an appeal by Delson Contracts Limited against the decision of the council to grant planning permission for the erection of 39 houses under planning application 24/00379/full. Subject to a planning condition requiring completion of a through link between Forfar Road and Glams Road serving development. So it's all there for us in writing, but do you want to make a quick word on that, Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Just to say, the reporter considered the information that was provided to them, including the submission of information by the applicant. I think ultimately the reporter wasn't persuaded that 39 houses required or justified the final connection of what was described as the link road, but it's noted that reporter, in terms of connectivity, did require a continuation of a cycling path network along the site frontage 3 metres wide. So they accepted our arguments about connectivity in terms of for sustainable travel, but they weren't convinced there was a necessity to provide a thorough link road for that final section that committee and officers were suggesting was necessary. So we weren't able to persuade them, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Mr. Taylor. All clear for everyone on that one? Right. I think at that point, that brings all formal business to an end for this meeting today.
Could we stop the live stream, please? That concludes the business today.
Thanks, everyone, for your attendance.